This is our rally project, our E36, and it's currently sitting right side up. But today we're gonna fabricate a roll cage just in case the day ever comes that we find ourselves upside down. Will it really be worth all my time, money, and effort? Let's find out. I'm Zach, welcome back to the pit, baby. Okay, let's bend some tubes. A massive thanks to eBay Motors for sponsoring today's episode. Now wait, don't go fast forwarding because this is important. Today marks the halfway point of our build, which means we've reached our mid-season finale. Now don't panic, we'll be back in just a few weeks and there's still a lot to do to get the E36 rally ready. But in the meantime, I'm gonna be filming high-low and I'm also kind of trying to relax at least a little bit this summer. But hey, even when I'm relaxing, you know I'm still browsing eBay Motors. There's always gonna be cars that I wanna work on, like the E36. And having access to eBay on my phone makes it really easy to shop online while I'm catching a great tan. And by now you guys know eBay isn't just some online car dealership flipping car after car. They're committed to building a diverse inventory and a safe automotive marketplace. It's where we got our wheels, our steering wheel, our seats, and I guess you're just gonna have to wait to see the rest. Now we've used eBay all season long, and thanks to their fitment tool feature, every part ordered has been a guaranteed fit for the E36. So get started on your own money pit today by clicking the link in the description below or by downloading the eBay Motors app. Now, I'm gonna go enjoy my summer and I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Now, rally racing seems really cool, partially because it's kind of dangerous. You know, you're driving off-road, through the trees, in the woods, jumping through the air. There's a lot of potential for crashing. So that's why we're gonna be building a roll cage to hopefully keep your boy safe in the event of destruction. But I've never built a roll cage on my own, and I'd really like to get it right the first try. So I figured this was a great excuse for me to have a friend over and one who knows how to build a roll cage. Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, you may recognize him. I did a bumper to bumper on his rear wheel drive converted Volkswagen GTI back in the day, and the thing's sick. Mike builds all sorts of cool stuff. He's got a build series on ECS Tuning's YouTube page. You should go check it out. But today he's here to do some cool stuff with me. Hello, Michael. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Well, with that, let's get right into it. We've got a lot of work to do, and Mike leaves in just a few short days. So let's get bending. Actually, we gotta get to stripping some sound deadening. So basically what we're gonna do right now is kind of get some of the wiring out of the way and determine where the roll cage is gonna mount to the chassis. Then we're gonna mark that area out roughly with Sharpie so that we know the areas that we need to get rid of sound deadening. Now, a lot of people would remove all the sound deadening, and that's not a terrible idea. You will save some weight, but it does take a lot of time, and it's not a super fun process. And as you may recall, we don't have time on our side. So for now, I think we're just gonna remove sound deadening out of the areas that we need to and move on. All right, so we've got the sound deadening out of the way in the front 4 spots. We don't have the rear done yet, but in these spots now we're cleaning up the adhesive and just the stuff that's left behind. Just using a little bit of thinner and some rags. Just kind of get this cleaned off as well as we can. Then we can hit it with a wire wheel to expose bare metal so that we can weld stuff in these areas.
Really conned you with this one, eh?
Yeah, doing all the fun stuff.
All right, we've gotten about as far as we can get with our hands.
It's time for power tools. So now that we have all the sound deadening up and then all the seam sealer stripped out, we're gonna start making templates for where the cage is gonna land. You have to reinforce the floor, so we're gonna be using 1/8" steel. So I'm just playing with some spare cardboard here and gonna start figuring out what needs to happen. So now we're gonna start cutting it out on this 1/8" plate. So I'm gonna give this plasma cutter a try and see how we do. When it comes to building a cage for your car, you really need to just pay attention to what the shape of the floor is, where you're trying to make these landing pads, and what the rules are. It's a lot harder to add these in after the fact than do it ahead of time. So now we just have to make this guy a twin, and then clean him up, bend up 2 opposites, and put him in the car. So you're gonna knock all the dross off the edges, then around the edges and start bending.
All right, so while Mike works on the templates and the landing positions for the roll cage, I'm gonna work on getting the dash out, which shouldn't be that hard. It looks like it's, pretty much halfway done, and I got a helper. Oh. Hey, she feels like she's free now. It's just a dash, no big deal. Okay, now with the dash out, and with Mike working on those, we are that much closer to actually bending up all this tube.
Damn, how we looking, boys?
Not too bad. We're getting somewhere.
I had nothing to do with this.
Well, the second plate fits pretty dang good, and so does the first. So now we basically have 4 more to make. And we still got to clean up the rear mounting points.
Ready for the elaborate bending process?
Yep.
Okay. Move it. I'll do this forever.
Wow. Pretty good. So we've already cleared the inside of the car of all the sound deadening and seam sealer, but the underside of the car is coated in some gunk as well. And if we didn't clean this off and we welded the roll cage in, this on the other side would catch on fire for sure. So I'm gonna hit all this with the wire wheel, get it cleaned up, and attempt to prevent any big fires. You know me, always trying to prevent fire. All right, so now that we've got the car ready to accept the cage, we got to talk about what kind of cage we're making and how we determine that.
So it really comes down to what you're going to use the car for. If you're just trying to have a little more safety in some track days or something like that, where the rules aren't super strict, then you can go one direction and keep the car pretty usable. Or if you're going into stage rally or something, the car is going to be a very serious cage and pretty hard to get in and out of. You are going with the middle road, it seems. So.
That's my road, baby. So we're gonna build a cage that would, if we wanted to, adhere to like a stage rally rule book if we kept building it. But we're gonna leave a few things out so it's a little bit more livable for now. Now that we understand that, what do you need to buy? What kind of materials do you use to make a roll cage?
Depending on the weight of your vehicle, most rule books will specify what size tubing you can use. For your car, you could have gotten away with 1.5" 120 wall or 1.75" 095, which is what we're gonna use. And that's a little stiffer and lighter for its own length.
Then what do we got here?
So this is just plate, just generic plate for making the landing pads. Otherwise, this is just kind of minimum thickness and dimensions for a lot of the landing feet for the cage, but that's also in most rule books.
Okay, so now that we understand the materials, what kind of tools do we need to make this thing happen?
The biggest thing is a bender. So that's the one you really can't do without.
So unless you got a friend with a bender, you're gonna be spending some money buying one. What else? Obviously a welder. That's another big ticket item. Hopefully you got a friend with one. Having a Mike Day doesn't hurt. Well, what else? Of course you need cutoff wheels, grinders, a pipe.
A notcher.
A notcher would be great.
A notcher makes things easier. You can do it without it. You can kind of just do cutoff wheel stuff, but it does make life a little easier.
So it seems like we've got the plan, we've got the materials, and we've got the tools. So now we got to do some planning and do some bending. We're chugging right along, baby. This is no big deal. Yeah, look at that. Somebody can still use that.
Yeah, they can still use that. A little cleaning.
All right, so we're finally ready to put our seats back in and start thinking about our main hoop and mocking that up and figuring out what size and shape to make it. How do we do that?
We're gonna go the software route.
Hell yeah. All right, so yeah, we're gonna check out some computer software and we're gonna design the main hoop and it should go pretty smoothly. Well, Captain, lead the way.
So this is BendTech Pro. It's one of the options. I mean, if you're super familiar with the bender, you're doing a ton of cage work with the same bender all the time, that's useful. I don't remember the ins and outs of where my die placement needs to be. This does all that for you.
This will keep us from making silly mistakes that honestly wouldn't even necessarily, it was just kind of a learning process with a new bender.
Right, that's the thing. We can verify all the different dimensions once we have our part mocked up here, then we can measure the car, make sure it'll fit.
Yeah, so that's my next question. How do we measure the car? How do we get data into this?
It's just a simple coordinate system. So you have a starting point, and then we're gonna say, come up from this floor pad, we're gonna come up 28 inches or so.
Okay, right to the door line.
And then we're gonna go to the right, because we want it to fit tight in the car. Call it 2 inches. Then we'll go to the bend location number 2. So this imaginary point we did here, but we're gonna come up, call it 17 inches, and then we'll go to the left 9 inches.
So now we're at the top corner.
We're at the top corner. So yeah, now we have this all bent up.
Nice.
Or a little
we got a hoop
piece. And then,
that was quick.
if I remember how to do this, verify. So you wanna close that door?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna see 53 and a half. 53 and a half. So that's pretty good, right? So we got a little extra on the bottom, which is nice.
Would you ideally make it a little long in that sense and trim it to get perfect?
Yep.
Well, tight. So is that ready? We're ready to cut that puppy up?
Yep.
Bend it.
And now we got all our bend numbers, the locations, the angle, and then yeah. If they were rotation, it'd tell you that too.
Well, hell yeah, it's time to cut some tube, bend it up.
Yep. Let's do it.
Let's make that IRL, you know what I mean? All right, Mike Day, now that we have made the hoop in the software, what's the first step to actually turning it into real tube?
First step, we gotta cut it to whatever the cut length is, and then we have to mark all of our bend locations down the tube.
Okay, so you just mark that, and then what, just a Sharpie mark at each bend location?
Yep, and we'll
that's
line
it?
those up with the die as it goes through. That's it.
Not too bad.
Not too bad. Now we cut. Be able to push down.
Well, that's gonna be a hoop. Now we just gotta mark out our bends, huh? All right, bend number 2 is at 42.197 inches. All right, now bend number 3, 61.459 inches.
Beautiful.
All right, bend number 5, 93.93 inches. So now we just gotta bend them. How exciting. Holding tube, baby. Oh, yeah. Okay, we got our first tube loaded up, and we've got our first bend lined up. Now we gotta bend this thing 33 degrees. Pull the trigger. We don't even have to do manual labor here. Thirty-three. All right, on to the next bend, right here. All right, we're moving on to our third bend, which is gonna be the center of our roof bend, so it keeps tight to the ceiling of the car. And as we move the tube through the bender, we've got this digital angle gauge down here that we need to keep at 0. We started out at 0, and we wanna make sure that as we make this, we don't twist this tube this way at all. So by keeping this at 0, we know that we're not twisting. All right, and our main hoop is bent, and it doesn't look so far like we messed it up. But the real test is putting it in the car. So let's do that. Let's do it. Okay, so we've got our main hoop in the car, and it looks great. All our bends look like they're gonna line up perfectly. We've got a little extra length at the bottom on purpose, so we can trim it back and really sneak up on perfect fitment. So that's what we're gonna do now. Mark what we need to trim off the bottoms, trim it, and then do this again until she sits right where we want to. Yeah, ow, my ass!
Looks relatively straight. Thoughts?
Looks pretty good.
Try this again.
Huh.
Close your side.
Nice.
Okay. Later down the road, once we have more tubes in the roof and the diagonals going up to that B-pillar, we can't weld the top side. So you can pull out the plates and drill holes underneath, so you can drop the cage through the floor, which is what we're gonna do here. You can build little boxes in the corners and then take those out, weld the top and put those back in. Or you can cut the roof off altogether. So I got everything marked up. I'm just gonna use a hole saw and punch through the floor, and should be pretty straightforward. All right, so we have our holes drilled and the plates tacked in. So we're about to tack in this B-pillar hoop. There's usually a rule on how much angle you can have on it. I believe it's usually within 10 degrees or so. You're pretty safe mirroring the B-pillar, which is what we're gonna do. And I think that looks better if it's nice and parallel. So we're just teeing everything up here and then we'll tack it in. Another important thing is to remember to tack it in a location where you can cut it. I didn't really just do that.
Tight, tight.
So that's gonna be a little annoying later.
What?
We're all tacked in.
We're all tacked in?
We're tacked in.
We're making some progress. So now it's time to build our A-pillar pieces, which are gonna follow forward and come down the A-pillar and intersect the dash and land at our landing spots up front here. So we've got 2 pieces to make to do our A-pillars, and then we'll move right along. So let's see what that takes. I think it's time to bust out the tape measure and that software again.
So how many bends are we looking at?
Well, I reckon at least
2, 3.
trace 3 bends and then straight down from yonder.
Yeah. So we're gonna come forward.
Frontwards 8 inches,
There to there.
about 19. Around here. I mean, by my eye, that's 18 and a half. Fairly 90-ish.
All right, so we have all our measurements plugged into the software. So we're ready to start laying it out and bending up some tube here.
6.827 inches.
6.827.
Twisted.
A-pillar.
All right. That looks like an A-pillar. Looks like it fits where it's supposed to go.
Yep, we got this little bump out around your head here, so
Yep.
you keep your noggin safe.
All right, well, cool. I mean, that looks like a solid A-pillar, and it seems to basically fit in its place. So the only things we have left to do to it, we're gonna make its twin for this side, then get it to fit with the landing pad down there nicely, which is gonna be pretty easy. It's almost there. And we also have to notch that to meet the main hoop, which I've never done. I'm interested to see how Mike Day does this. All right, so let's see this notching technique, Michael.
We're gonna do just a kind of generic cutoff wheel flap disc situation where we're just gonna cut a little V in it and then round it out with the flap disc. Once you get that figured out, you can do it by eye pretty well.
So now you just kind of gotta shape it to get those to meet up a little bit better.
Yep, we're just gonna keep rounding out these corners a little bit. And now we try and see if any of that's even close.
Which side is this? Hey! Ooh, yeah.
So we're gonna mark the bottom, drill a hole, put the plate back over it, and then we can tack this. So I got the passenger side all tacked in. Now we just have to do the same thing again on the driver's side and make its twin, and then we can move on from the A-pillars. Once we're done with this and have this side tacked in, we're gonna start working with the roof bars.
All right, baby, we're really cooking now. Look at this whole bar I just made, connected to the other bar I just made. We are really making some progress now. It is getting late, however, so my boy Eddie's about to take off, but we're gonna keep cranking at it for an undetermined amount of time, and we'll see you guys in the morning. Well, what do you know? We're right where you left us. And we've made some progress, but there's more to be done.
So we've welded everything we can with the cage up. So now it's time to remove those plates and drop the cage down through the floor. And then drop through the floor, weld the tops of all these pieces. Now once it's back up, we can start doing the X for this main hoop.
All right, well, we've come a long way. There's a roll cage in the car and it's dropped through the floor. So now it's time to spray a little bit of spray paint on top of the cage, the parts that would be tough to paint once the cage is in its final home. So we're gonna move the car forward to get some fans going and spray some spray paint. Well, the top of our cage is officially painted white and it looks okay. But now we gotta do more of the same old stuff. We gotta pull the cage up and weld it into place, finish up a few bars, and then we gotta redo all of our plastic sheeting and paint the lower half of the cage. So, more of the same old song and dance. So we just gotta get dancing, baby.
All right, so we have the cage back up and tacked in place. So now it's time to burn all these places in for real.
While Mike's finishing up some welding in the car, I'm making some plates so that we can mount the 5th point of our 5-point harnesses to the car. So I just need to cut a couple rectangles out of some plate, put a couple bends in them, put a hole in them, and then put a hook through them so we can attach the 5th point.
So we have one of the diagonals done for the main hoop. I'm working on the second. Some of these notches are a little tricky with so many tubes coming together. An important thing to note, you're always gonna have a little discrepancy in your cage from one side to the other, but if both X's don't line up when you look down the center of the car, it'll drive you nuts. Only 2 more tubes left to go. So we have to do the harness bar across, which is gonna be a 2-piece harness bar because we put the diagonals as 1 piece. So we're gonna have to throw the seats back in and make sure the harness bar lines up while we make that, and then we're done with tubes. So right now I'm trying to figure out where Zach's shoulder line is and then how much angle to put on the straps. That's kind of dependent on the strap manufacturer, so we're taking that into account here, and we're gonna start figuring out where to lay out the tube and then tack things up. All right, so I've got the last tube fitted up. Time to weld it in and move on. So yeah, that was it. That was the last bit of welding. It's getting pretty late. Don't know what the plan is now.
Paint the cage. Oh, I don't really feel like it. It's a lot of mess. I'm gonna get gross again. Well, we got a cage completed in the car, and now the whole car is masked off so we can paint again for the last time. And then that's the last thing we're doing tonight. We do have some stuff left to do tomorrow. Let's squirt some paint. All right, the cage is painted. We've got a couple spots that are lifting up, but we'll fix that. Well, I'll fix that later. For now, it looks pretty dang good. So now the only thing we gotta do is close it up, put it back inside, and let it dry overnight. Great. All right, without further ado, let's
push this back inside and go to bed, yeah. Perfect. All right, so it's a new day. The cage is painted, came out pretty decent, all things considered. So we just have a few more things to button up, like putting the dash in and kind of the rest of the interior stuff, and then we should be good to go. All right, we're pretty much wrapped up with the interior. So the last few things to do are to undercoat kind of where we welded already. So there's a bunch of bare metal that we had to strip away the sound ending from originally, and we don't want that to corrode or do anything. So it's not much effort to really make things last a heck of a lot longer.
Well, Mike, we did it.
We did it.
It seems like we did it anyway.
We're 99% done. We have certainly put in some hours. Is this as much work as you expected for a cage?
This is definitely more work. I mean, I knew it was gonna be a lot of work, but I was just thinking about the cage work. And then once it's done, you have so much stuff to put back in. So it's definitely more work than I was thinking, a little bit more time than I was expecting, but look at the result.
Look at the result. Yeah, you can't argue with this.
Exactly, you can't argue with the result, and I learned a new skill. So it's been a lot of work, but it's been also a lot of fun, in my opinion. This is cool stuff to do. And it's also really cool to be able to know how to do it. So thank you, Mike.
Oh, anytime.
Thanks for coming out, showing me how to do it, showing everybody how to make a cage, letting us into that brain a little bit.
It's a dangerous place.
I'm sure, but look at what comes out of it. So thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you guys learned a thing or two or 3,000 from Mike Day. It's been a good time for me. I hope you had fun, and I'll be seeing you guys next Wednesday. In the meantime, go over to Instagram and follow me at Zach Job, follow Mike at Mike the Day. Like, go do it right now, and follow Donut while you're there. See you guys next Wednesday.